Hello world, Kyle here with NimbleNoggin.io, and today we're going to talk about how to make an IB outlet from a constraint in the storyboard. And the main reason that you would want to do this is that, say, after a view is presented, see how we are on this text field's view controller here, at some point in time you may want to change some values of that constraint without having to remove all constraints from the object you're wanting to move around and then re-adding them with the adjusted value. Instead, why don't we just change the value of an existing constraint? And the real-world example of this in this text field view controller is that we want this bottom text field to dodge, to move up out of the way of the keyboard when it shows. But how can we do that if all of our constraints are in the storyboard? Well, we just need to hook it up to our view controller code and store a reference to that constraint as an IB outlet like we would any other item on the storyboard. So we can see here in the code that we do have the IB outlet already for that bottom constraint that we were editing to move the text field out of the way of the keyboard, and we have that right below some other objects in that view. We do know that if you right click and drag from an object in the storyboard onto the code for that view controller, then it'll bring up this little window and you can type in a name for the reference to the object using an IB outlet. And there's also something called an outlet collection, which is sort of like it stores an array of IB outlets without having to reference each one, but they must be of the same type. But that's not important because we're just talking about normal IB outlets here. So we don't need to make another IB outlet for this text field we have here. So we know that we are already editing the constant for this bottom constraint here, and we can see up here in the referencing outlets that there is a reference to the text field view controller with a name of bottom constraint, and that's the one we have right here. But what if for some reason we also wanted to change the height at some point during the presentation of this view controller? And I'm just picking a random constraint here. I don't have a situation that we would want to change the height of this text field for, but let's make an IB outlet for it anyway. We're going to right click drag or control drag into the code, and we are using the assistant editor up here, so you can have two editing windows side by side in the whole editing area. So let's just call this bottom text field height constraint. And maybe there's an event that we would want to edit this value, but let's just go down here. Before view will layout subviews or some other method or event like that is called, so that when we change the constant here that it actually is changed, instead of having to ask the app or this view to recalculate its position with its auto layout constraints. So we'll just say self.bottom text field height constraint dot constant equals 1000. So if we run this again, we'll see that on viewed load that we're setting the constant of this constraint, which is the height of this view, to 1000. So this box should be huge. This text field should be huge. Yes, it's giant. And it's also throwing off the layout of the rest of the screen because it's not expecting it to be that huge, because that's a little ridiculous. But it works perfectly for our example. Thanks for watching.